Welcome, everyone. Welcome. In the following presentation, we're going to be talking about the story Scattered Inconveniences, a narrative by Jerald Walker. Well, this presentation is part of a series of other stories we've looked at and we've observed. And I have advised that one aspect, one way, I shouldn't say it's the only way, in writing, the creativity of writing is just endless. But one of the ways in which you can compose this story is um, one of the ways in which you can compose a story is uh, uh, through the use of what I call or what's referred to as the Freytag pyramid. Not my creation, certainly. Um, it's noted as the Freytag pyramid. And the common elements of a Freytag pyramid are the protagonist, the circumstances that protagonist is facing, the conflict the protagonist is undergoing, right? Uh, in an attempt to get to a particular goal. So here's the protagonist trying to get to his or her goal, held back by the conflict, and the story would become indicatory that the rising action portrays a protagonist attempting to ameliorate the difficulties of this conflict. How am I as a protagonist resolving this conflict? And the following action, the type of um, the reflective, um, I guess almost a lesson learned in the process of dealing with the conflict. Doesn't mean you've overcome the conflict. I mean, that's the hopefulness. That's what we as readers aspire to see the protagonists do. We're rooting for them. If you're a good writer, you've led us to support you as a protagonist. Um, but if you don't overcome the conflict, you'll nevertheless promote a message for the reader, right? If you notice this Freytag pyramid I have here, it has like a little side triangle. It kind of breaks the mold of the traditional Freytag pyramid. And what I mean by this is that within the scope of the primary structure of the Freytag pyramid, Jerald Walker does something really interesting with his writing, and this might help you with your own writing. In that, as telling an in the moment story, right? This is that in the moment narrative you're telling, you shift the reader onto another story when you relate a memory. So Walker's telling his story, and then he he kind of shifts you away a little bit, tells another story, and then shows you and says, "Look, here's another little story that is of meaning and relevance to the primary story I'm telling." So let's observe. Protagonist is Jerald Walker, right? And he does tell us, right? He does show us the circumstances and the context, um, but he doesn't begin that way, right? He doesn't immediately begin telling us what the circumstances and the context are. Uh, you know, uh, um, he first begins with this cowboy. At least that's what he labels him. This white cowboy in a brown pickup, and he's waving his hat out as he's driving. He's driving the moving truck. I think it's a Ryder actually. Penske though, but I think it's a Ryder truck. Driving the Ryder truck, um, and he's waving his hat out, and he's tooting his horn, and he's getting in front of them and braking. And Walker, says, "What's going on with this cowboy? My goodness!" And then he tells after he tells of this immediate threat of the white cowboy, he said, he refers back to the circumstances, and he says, "Gosh, here I am. I'm trying to get my wife to the promised land, right? This dream job, rare tenure position at a university, a collegiate position in New England. And I was going to be a stay-at-home dad, take care of our child, going to be a writer. always great, and we were gonna get there, or we are gonna get there if only as soon as I overcome this conflict, right? So right now in the story, you as the reader, we're perceiving that the primary conflict, at least, is this white cowboy. In this individual in this brown pickup sees this black family moving, and so we're assuming, right? We've become Jerald Walker to a certain extent. We're making these assumptions about the white cowboy as being racist, oppressive, uh, uh, um, you know, critical. You know, he's a danger to them, so to speak. So it kind of fuels up a little bit of a revolutionary insight. And he says, uh, you know, when I was growing up in Iowa, I know the severity of racism isn't what it was before. So whenever I would walk the street, or I'd be at a store and maybe have women hide their purses when I was approaching nearby them, or I'd go to the gym and I'd have white boys mirror me and mimic me like a gorilla, make these offensive, critical references. Whenever all this is happening, I thought, I was always educated to find victory in this, find victory that this is but a slap on the wrist compared to the severity of racism that the black man used to face, or black woman for that matter as well, right? And again, he's fueling up a fire inside, right? The reader, at least a reader who's one in favor of equality, right? And then he does a 180. And I think this is the fascinating aspect of Walker's story. He says, I am a racist. When he does that, you as a reader, you come to a halt and you're like, what? Hold on a second. Hey, you're not the racist. Isn't it the white cowboy? I mean, there's a fascinating of his writing that immediately the brakes are held, right? And so here's Walker. He's a racist, whatever that means. We're confused at this point as a reader. And then this is where he shifts into that side triangle, and he begins telling the story of his upbringing. And as you read the story, you saw, that he's being brought up with this black black power type of attitude, right? The culture of the times. Um, um, give yourself that identity, that anti-white man identity. And he says, it was hard to do that in my upbringing because of one thing. Here's the conflict. It's my brother Clyde. And I have an image here of Booker T. Washington, who's, by metaphorical measures or as an analogy of a black conservative, right? A black conservative of the black man as educated man, intellectual, not necessarily a violent man, right? Whereas Walker, he wants to be that the cultural, the stereotypical anti-white man, black man, right? Violence against the white man. Give yourself an identity, right? And he says most young boys wanted to be postal clerks or pimps. I'm not sure I understand the postal clerks very much, right? But there's a sense of fashion that the anti-white man invoked. And he says, referring back to his brother Clyde, he says, my brother Clyde, he didn't wear bell bottoms, he didn't wear platforms. The only thing that held his identity a little bit was his afro, and it could have been bigger, right? Um, and he says, so he's telling the story. He's telling the story of his upbringing, how Clyde uncommonly contradicted his goals as this revolutionary, fight the white man type of attitude. And he wasn't getting it. And when Clyde would say, the only thing that can stop you is you. Don't blame the white man. The only thing that can stop you is you. And he says he doesn't get it until he brings us back. He brings us back to the Highway 180. I think that's what the highway is, and the circumstances with the white man. So now we now see it, right? We're seeing his critique of this white man colored and enhanced by his reference to his upbringing as a you know as a young boy whose father kicks out Clyde. Get out of here, Clyde. You're 21. You're out of here. You're not promoting the anti-white man, so you're out of here. And he said, I didn't quite get it until here I am on the highway. Here's the white man waving his hat, tooting his horn, and his wife says, I'm going to lower the window. He says, no, don't lower the window. Doesn't listen, lowers the window and says, shortly comes back and says, stop the truck, right? The washer's about to fall out. And whoa, lo and behold, this white man, aren't we feeling silly now for criticizing the white man? This white man's actually and here's another stereotype. The cowboy is the hero. The white cowboy is the hero, right? And he was actually severely trying to help them, because had he not done that, imagine the severity of stopping, getting the washer dryer back into the rider, uh, um, um, timeliness, Anyways, the white man truly helps him. It was really helpful to both Walker and his family. And he ends the story by saying, I did not actually have to say I was sorry. And again, why was Walker behaving the way he was? He gave us that side story as a coloring for the primary story in his critique, initial anyways, his initial critique of the white man, of this of this uh, this white man that we too as readers, by craftfulness of Walker's story, perceived as a racist, as a supremacist, as what have you, only to be that he was a very helpful, and to a certain extent heroic man. Right? So there you have it. Scattered Inconveniences, a really interesting story. And you notice that at least structurally, if you're composing a narrative and you have a memory that triggers off, I hope this somewhat helps you structurally anyways, as Walker exemplifies of how you can compose a story in this manner. Okay. I hope this helps you. This is but one perception of Jerald Walker's Scattered Inconveniences. It's a great story. And again, once again, I hope it's helped you. Thank you.